This is the second part of the week 4 video. So hopefully before watching this video, you've completed this week's work, as well as watch that clip from CNN from one of the Republican debates where Dr. Carson is talking to Mr. Trump. So I want to talk about why I had you guys watch that clip and why I think that it's a really good example. So first of all, as you've hopefully figured out, the idea of correlation versus causation is a very difficult concept, and it's not something that's really easy for us as people to make inference about. And the reason for that is just because of how the human brain's wired. If we look at data and it looks like there's some kind of underlying pattern, so in other words, if we look at a plot and it looks like there's an association or it looks like there's a correlation, our brains automatically jump to think, oh, well then there must be a causation. Something has to be going on there. And hopefully what you saw today by looking at the work is that's not the case. We can look at data on plots and it'll appear as one thing's happening, but there could always be a lurking variable, there could always be a confounder. That does not necessarily mean that there's causation between two things just because a plot looks like there's a pattern. And so that's why I thought that this was a really good video to bring up. Because notice what we have in this video. We have two educated people that are running for president. They're on a national platform, so they don't want to make any mistakes. They want to make sure they get their facts right, what they're saying is correct. But even in this case, we still have these ideas between correlation and causation are confused. And so let's talk about how these are confused in the video. So I'm going to start out by talking about the statements made by Dr. Carson first. So notice that the video starts out with, and Dr. Carson clearly says, it's a well-documented, we know that there is no correlation between vaccines and autism. And this is actually incorrect. You all saw in Beyond the Numbers 1.26 and 1.33, there is a correlation and there's an association between vaccines and autism. And he actually makes that statement a second time at the end of the video. And so this is actually incorrect. You guys saw in those Beyond the Numbers, if we make a plot and we look at vaccine rates versus autism rates, that there actually is, visually there's something happening. There is that correlation. It kind of looks like there's a straight line. But that does not mean there's a causation. So I think that's really what Dr. Carson was trying to get out there, is there's not a proven causation. There is most definitely a correlation, and you all saw that. And that kind of starts to illustrate why these ideas are so confusing, because we can plot those things on a plot. We do see a correlation. That doesn't mean causation. And so Dr. Carson actually got that wrong here. There is a clear correlation between those two things. And now in the second part, if you kind of ignore the banter between the two, if we really kind of break down what's happening there, notice that Mr. Trump was asked, do you think there's a causation between vaccines and autism? And automatically what he does is he goes to a specific instance that he had witnessed, and he uses that as kind of evidence to have you infer that there is a causation. Well, hopefully the other thing that you've picked up in this course is the only way to prove causation would be to talk about an experiment. So in other words, to say, hey, vaccine use does cause autism, the only way to prove that is you need to cite an actual experiment, a well thought out, well set up experiment that controls for these lurking variables. That's really the only way to prove causation. And again, this is another thing that's really hard for us as humans, because we've all done this. We take colloquial information that we've witnessed and we say, oh, I've witnessed this thing, I've seen it happen, therefore this one thing must cause the other one. We've all done this at some point. But it's not correct. In order to prove causation, you have to actually do an experiment. And the reason for that, again, is we have to control for those lurking variables. We have to control for those confounders. And it could just be that that one thing that we witnessed was just due to random chance. And in order to take care of that, we have to do an experiment. And so that's why I thought this was a good video to watch, because both Dr. Carson and Mr. Trump have confused this idea of correlation and how we actually show a causation. And again, these are two people on national television that, they want to make sure they're saying the right thing. They have people behind them that are helping them, say the right thing, but they have still confused these ideas. So to think that these ideas are easy is really not true. These are complex ideas that people confuse all the time, and that's why they're so important to think about and realize that there really is a difference between plotting something and seeing the way that data looks and then going to claim that there is a causation. We really do have to have that experimentation. Now, to kind of further this point, below this video there's a link, and I was going to offer some bonus points for today. I was going to offer 3 bonus points on the first exam, and in order to get those 3 bonus points, what you have to do is I want you to follow that link. And so what this link is this is a website that somebody has built, and basically what they do is they take all different kinds of data and they just look for correlations between 2 things. And so you're going to see there's a lot of crazy things that are compared on this website, and there's going to be clear plots, and it's going to either show a correlation or an association. But you're going to see immediately by looking at these things, there's no way that one causes the other one. So these are good examples where we have correlation but no causation. So all I'd like you to do is I'd just like you to visit that website. I'd like you to kind of scroll through it, look at those different plots that are there, and just email me. So again, you're not going to post this on Canvas, you're going to email it to me. Just let the subject line be bonus points. Email me and say, hey, I thought these were 2 really interesting ones. You know, I found it was really interesting that these 2 things had a correlation, but obviously there's no causation between the 2. And I think when you see examples like this, it really drives home that idea that we can look at data and it looks like there's some kind of pattern, but really the other one's not causing the other one to do anything. It just so happens that there's that pattern when we plot them, and there's probably some underlying lurking variable there, and that lurking variable may be really hard to identify what it is, but we know that there has to be something. So again, for those 3 bonus points on exam 1, I just want you to visit that website that's below this video, pick out 2 that you thought were really interesting, email them to me and say, hey, I saw these 2, I thought they were really interesting, and you'll get those 3 bonus points on the exam.